Hello friends, today I am going to discuss a poem titled I Remember by Thomas Hood. Thomas Hood is an English poet, a journalist, an editor and a humorist, and his very popular poem, the Song of the Shirt, is known for its humanitarian feelings. He was also a writer of comic verse, and he was also an editor of the London Magazine during its heyday. And the contributors to the London Magazine in those days included great names like Charles Lamb, Thomas De Quincey and William Hazlitt. He later went on to edit the Gem, the Comic Annual and Hood's Magazine. He was influenced greatly by Keats in his poetry writing, and he brought out a collection of poems titled The Plea of the Midsummer Fairies. He is now most remembered for this particular poem titled I Remember. It's a very simple and a very beautiful lyric poem, a poem in which the writer recalls the happy days of his childhood. The short poem comprises of 4 8-line stanzas. So let me go through the poem quickly. I remember the house where I was born, the little window where the sun came peeping in at morn. He never came a wink too soon, nor brought too long a day, but now I often wish the night had borne my breath away. I remember the roses red and white, the violets and the lily cups, those flowers made of light, the lilacs where the robin built, and where my brother set the laburnum on his birthday. The tree is living yet. I remember where I was used to swing, and thought the air must rush as fresh to swallows on the wing. My spirit flew in feathers then, that is so heavy now. The summer pools could hardly cool the fever on my brow. I remember the fir trees dark and high. I used to think their slender tops were close against the sky. It was a childish ignorance, but now 'tis little joy to know I'm farther off from heaven than when I was a boy. So in stanza 1, now you can see that in all the stanzas, the first line acts as a refrain. All the stanzas begin with the line, I remember. The poet begins by talking about the house where he was born. The house where I was born, the little window where the sun came peeping in at morn. So every morning the sun came in through the particular window, and he says he never came a wink too soon, nor brought too long a day. Means whenever the sun came in, the children or the child, the boy, was ready for him. Because when we are little children, we have, especially if you have a happy childhood, you have so many plans for the day. And so that's why he says he never came a wink too soon, nor brought too long a day. The child had never thought, oh my God, let this day end, I'm tired of this day. Because his schemes and plans and games would not be over even late in the evening. And so the days were in fact not long enough. So that's what he means by saying he never came a wink too soon nor brought too long a day. But now I often wish the night had borne my breath away. But he says today I don't look forward as an adult, who's kind of pulled down by burdens and anxieties and worries, financial constraints, so many things. It bears me down, it pulls me down, and I often wish that I would die in my sleep. I wish the night had borne my breath away. Means I am not desirous of facing another new day. So this is a contrast to the earlier few lines when he said that the sun never came a wink too soon nor brought too long a day, meaning that the day was not enough, and then they would look forward to the next day, because there were so many things to be done. so many places to explore, so many new games to play, so many trees to climb, adventures to go on, secrets to keep, the adults, the secrets to be kept from the adults, so many things, so many pranks and mischiefs to be planned. But that is not the case when he is an adult. He wants to just slip away into the cold comfort of death. He doesn't want to wake up to face another day. So you can see the contrast there between the happy childhood and the burdened adulthood. Next stanza, I remember, remember, the refrain again. The roses red and white, the violets and the lily cups, those flowers made of light, the lilacs where the robin built, and where my brother set the laburnum on his birthday. The tree is living yet. So he now remembers all the beautiful flowers and plants of those days, the roses which were red and which were white, the violets, the lily cups, those flowers made of light. He remembers all those beautiful flowers that added color to his days, the roses red and white, the violets, the dark violet, violet flowers, and the lily cups, those flowers made of light. He remembers them with such joy because these flowers could lighten up the world. I remember reading somewhere that the flowers are the smiles of the earth. You know how if a single flower is put in a flower vase and kept in a room, the whole barren, uninteresting room suddenly becomes lively, isn't it? So that's the flowers made of light. The lilacs where the robin built. The lilac again is a plant where the robin built. The robin built in the sense the robin bird would build its nests in the lilacs. And of course, when we are children, we know all that. We know where the different birds have built their nests. We like to take a peek into the nest to see the eggs and to take a look at the chicks when the eggs are hatched. So the lilacs where the robin built, and where my brother set the laburnum on his birthday. So the laburnum is yet another flowering tree. It's got yellow flowers hanging down in bunches, golden yellow flowers that bloom, fully bloom with not a single leaf, just the golden flowers hanging in golden bunches. It's a beautiful sight. And the laburnum tree, this was something that his brother had set on his birthday, means his brother had planted one on one of his birthdays. And look at the last line, the tree is living yet. What does that mean? That the brother is no more. The brother who had set or planted the laburnum tree is no more, but the tree is living yet. So there again, happy memories contrasted with something sorrowful, the sad realization that his dear brother is no more. Next stanza, I remember, where I was used to swing, and thought the air must rush as fresh to swallows on the wing. My spirit flew in feathers then. That is so heavy now. So he says he used to swing on, he used to spend time on the swing, and when he felt the rush of the wind when he used to swing, he felt that this is what the swallows must be feeling as they fly in the sky. This is how the wind would rush through the wings of the swallow. And he thought that he was a swallow, at least for some time, when he was swinging high. So thought the air must rush as fresh to swallows on the wing, flying swallows. And the swallow, of course, you know, is a bird that flies high. And swallows fly closer to the ground, it is believed, when it's going to rain. And the reason for that is that when it is going to rain, the insects also will start flying low, and the swallows will come down lower from the high altitude which they usually keep in order to catch these flies. And so he says, Those days my spirit flew in feathers, means I was unburdened. I was so happy, carefree, no worries, no pains. That's why he says, my spirit flew in feathers. That is so heavy now. So now you can see the contrast once again between then and now. Then he was so light, now his heart is so heavy. The summer pools could hardly cool the fever on my brow. So even the summer pools, found somewhere lost deep inside woods, cool to touch and so soothing. He says even the summer pools cannot cool the heat, the fever of my brow. So the fever of the brow is not exactly the fever of the body. It is the burning fever of his mind, the worries and the troubles, the seething problems that keep him awake day and night. So it is that he's talking about, the fever on my brow. Nothing can cool the fever on my brow. I have lost my peace of mind. I have lost my lightheartedness. I have lost my joy. Now in stanza 4, the last stanza, he says, I remember, the fir trees dark and high. I used to think their slender tops were close against the sky. So he says, when I was young, I remember seeing the dark fir trees, the tall and high fir trees. And I used to think that the sky was very close to them, because when you look, you would feel that the top of the tree is touching the sky. Especially when you are a child, you believe that if you climb on top of the tree, you can just reach out and touch the sky. But he says, now I realize that was childish ignorance. But now it is little joy to know I am farther off from heaven than when I was a boy. So those days I was happy in the knowledge, albeit wrong, that I am close to heaven. There is just the distance. It is just the distance of a tree between the heavens and the earth. I can just climb a tree and then leap off into heaven. That was childish ignorance. But what has this realization given to me? It has taken away all my joy. And now it is little joy. There is hardly any joy to know that I am farther from heaven than when I was a boy. So now I have grown up, I have matured into an adult, and now I know that heaven is not as close as it seemed to be. That was just a myth. The reality is that heaven is far, far away, and heaven is a place that is not easily reached. That heaven is oftentimes just a dream. And that, he says, is not at all a comforting thought. So here again he talks about how his present condition is so far removed and so depressing compared to his happy childhood days. So a very simple poem with which all of us can relate to, especially if you have gone through a lot of unhappy events in your life, a lot of saddening experiences and irreplaceable losses. It is very easy to identify with this poem. And this last line, to know I am farther off from heaven than when I was a boy, also brings to mind Wordsworth and his philosophy of how children are closer to heaven and closer to God. He believed in this pre-existence theory, where according to which children were born in heaven, or they lived in heaven. The souls, all our souls, once we are dead, the souls go back to heaven and we are there. We live in oneness with God till we are born again. And what happens when we are born again? In the initial few years, or maybe up to your youth, you still retain some remnants of the memories of heaven, and you know a lot of things about the world which an adult doesn't know. But then what happens after that? As you mature into an adult, you lose touch, the contact with, the direct hotline that you had with God, it is severed. And then you get yourselves embroiled in the troubles of the earth, and you forget heaven and its pleasures and its serenity. And so this last few lines resonate the same emotions and feelings of Wordsworth, I feel. And of course, Thomas Hood must have read his older contemporary William Wordsworth. And I mentioned earlier that he was influenced by Keats. Definitely, he must have been influenced by other contemporaries too, as we see in this line. And so the contrast that he portrays, this recurrent theme of lost innocence and a burdened adulthood, it is quite common in many of the poems of the Romantic poets. And he too belonged to that era of writers. He too talks about the same theme, and it's a beautiful poem. You can see that in each stanza there is a contrast between the joys of childhood and the sorrows of adulthood. A very simple poem, but a poem that definitely resonates with each of us as we traverse the unpredictable contours of our life.